Welcome, my dear students. Today, before we start today's lecture, let me tell you something which is related to your subject. Political science is a subject which many a times needs your opinion. So how do you form your opinion related to different social, political and educational issues? One of the ways to form your opinion related to different issues is reading the newspaper. ठीक है? एक तो न्यूज़पेपर में what has happened yesterday and what is going on, एक तो वो वाली न्यूज़, प्लस न्यूज़पेपर में सेंटर के पेजेस में 2-3 पेजेस होते हैं ओपेड पेजेस, ठीक है, ओपिनियन पेजेस. तो वहाँ पे डिफरेंट राइटर्स के आर्टिकल्स होते हैं, यू नीड टू रीड देम, ठीक है. सो आई वुड सजेस्ट टू यू to start reading newspapers. Make it your habit to read newspapers, and newspapers may you do not have to read only news, what has happened yesterday and what will happen what will happen tomorrow. You have to also read the opinion pages, ठीक है, articles भी आपको पढ़ने हैं, ठीक है. And by reading those articles, you will frame your own opinion regarding different issues, whether educational, political or socio-economic issues. So let's start today's topic. Today our topic is electoral reforms. So far we have done democracy, elections, electoral system, and then Election Commission of India, a body which is responsible for holding and announcing the elections. So, mind is, each system has its own flaws, and at every point of time you have to think of the reforms, how you can bring the reforms, and are these reforms in a position to strengthen the system. In the same way, our electoral system and our whole electoral process has its own flaws, has its own drawbacks, has its own limits. So what we need to do is, we need to bring some reforms, we need to take some initiatives to undo those flaws. So today we are discussing electoral reforms. Electoral reforms are basically initiatives, ठीक है? Initiatives which are undertaken with an objective to reform the whole election process, to reform the democracy. So before coming to what should be the electoral reforms which should be brought in the electoral process of India, let us see some loopholes, some drawbacks, some limits of a whole electoral process in India. Among many of the flaws which Indian electoral process suffers from, one of the major flaw to the Indian electoral process is money power. Money is playing an important role in Indian politics. And if you see the data of Lok Sabha parliamentarians of 2019, more than 80% of the parliamentarians are crorepati's. So basically what political parties do is, they, due to the expenses incurred in the elections, they give tickets to basically millionaires, to crorepati's only. So one of the drawbacks, one of the loopholes, one of the limits of the Indian electoral process is that there is a money power. Money is playing an important part, and it is basically creating a gap between rich and poor, where a poor person cannot think of contesting the election because political party will not give him a ticket. Number 2, another limit, another drawback, or I would say another flaw in the Indian electoral process is that there is distortion of seat vote ratio. As we have already discussed that in India for the elections of Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies, there is first past the post system. And when we have discussed this system, elaborately, I have told you that under this system, share of seats is not proportional to the share of votes. So this is also one of the limits of this whole electoral process. Where in a political party with just the vote share of 45% may get 80% of the seats. So it is basically distortion of seat vote ratio. And third loophole we see in the electoral process is that there is the misuse of public media. There is, paid news has become now a common thing. And, media houses are basically, bought by the different political parties to run their propaganda. So it amounts to misuse of public media. Number 4, underrepresentation of women. My dears, that the population is almost 50% male, 50% female, or there may be some ups and downs, but almost it is same. But if we see the representation in our legislature, in our parliament, we have just 14% women in Lok Sabha. Just 14% women in Lok Sabha. 78. Okay. Out of 543 elected Lok Sabha members, we have just 78 women. Okay. There are various reasons responsible for it. For example, in India, women are not encouraged to participate, to contest the elections, okay, due to various socio and religious reasons. And one of the important reasons related to this is patriarchy. Okay? Patriarchy, wherein there is a patriarchy is a notion wherein there is a male dominance in each and every sphere of our society. So that is why there remains underrepresentation of women. And number 5 is lack of transparency. The provision of transparency is one of the important, one of the important, I would say one of the important points of right to know. Because when there is no transparency, you would not know what has been going on. So as far as this lack of transparency is concerned, it is also associated with money. Okay? Money. It is also associated with money. In 2017, Indian government has brought a new system in place which is known as electoral bond. Okay? Electoral bond. Electoral bonds. It was introduced in 2017 Union Budget. तो इसमें क्या होता है कि it is basically a financial tool to donate money to the political parties. But there is no transparency in it. You would not know who has donated to a political party and how much. if we look at the figures of 2017-18 and 2018-19, numerous corporators, numerous individuals have donated 2,760 crore rupees to political parties, and out of which 1,660 crore went to BJP. Okay? And the common voter, common citizen does not know who has donated all this money and when it was donated, because there is lack of transparency. Before the introduction of electoral bonds in 2017, there was a provision under the Representation of People's Act wherein if a political party got the donation of more than 20,000, political party had to reveal that information to the government. But once this electoral bond system was introduced, it has been the provision of anonymity has been kept there, and common citizens, voters are unable to know who has donated how much and when. So these are some loopholes in our system, and I hope when you are trying to look at these loopholes, when you are trying to look at these flaws in our electoral process and in our electoral system, you might be thinking of your own reforms. Okay? So these are some flaws in our electoral process and electoral system. Number one we have discussed is power of money power in electoral politics, wherein only millionaires and billionaires are getting tickets, and poor people who wish to contest the elections, they are ignored by the political parties. And number two is distortion of seat vote ratio. मैंने आपको कहा कि under first past the post system, the share of seats in the legislature is not proportional to the share of votes, and it is one of the flaws, wherein a political party with just a share vote of with just a vote share of 35% may get 70% of the seats. And another is misuse of public media. Recently elections were held, and how different political parties were using media to run their propaganda and to turn the voters into their own interest. And then underrepresentation of women, and this is one of the serious concerns of the electoral reforms. But underrepresentation of women kahan pe? Parliament mein and state legislature mein, not in local bodies, because in local bodies, in panchayatis we have 33% reservation for women. Then it is lack of transparency. Okay? By introducing the concept of electoral bonds, there is now no transparency, and we do not know who has donated how much and when. So these are some flaws which are existing in the system, and we need to reform these flaws. My dears, government has over the period of time set up various committees to look at the flaws, to look at the issues of electoral malpractices. There are different committees, and you have to keep in mind the name of few committees. Among them one was Tarkundi Committee. as I have told you in previous lectures, that voting age was reduced by 61st Constitutional Amendment 1989 from the voting age was, the minimum voting age was reduced from 21 to 18. So it was basically the suggestion of Tarkundi committee, to reduce the voting age from 21 to 18. And it has not just given that one suggestion, it has given numerous other suggestions. And like Tarkundi committee, another committee was appointed known as Goswami committee. Goswami committee 1990s. It has also given its own suggestions. इन्होंने बाय इलेक्शंस पे बात की. They have Goswami committee reported on one of the suggestions was that by election should be held on time. And इसी तरीके से another committee was Indrajit Gupta committee. One of the important suggestions made by this Indrajit committee was that there should be the state funding of political parties during elections. इन्होंने कहा कि there should be the state funding. There should be the state funding such that there would be an level playing field for every political party. But its suggestion was not taken into consideration by the different ruling regimes. So state funding में क्या होगा? State funding में while elections, every political party would be funded out of the state's own funds, and such that it would provide a level playing field to each political party. So these are some committees which were framed to relook at our electoral practices and to suggest some reforms. And many of the reforms they have suggested, all of those reforms were not implemented, but some of the suggestions were taken into consideration by the government. So far what we have done, we have seen the flaws in our electoral process and system, and then we have discussed some of the committees and some of their suggestions, wherein I have told you all the suggestions were not implemented because the recommendations of these committees are not binding on the government. It is then up to government whether government wants to implement those suggestions or whether government wants not. So now let's now look at some reforms. Why do we need reforms in our electoral system? Mind you, numerous scholars, numerous political experts are suggesting that we should replace post system with proportional representation, because in first past the post system, the share of seats in the legislature is not proportional to the share of votes a political party has got. But in proportional representation, share of seats in the legislature is proportional to the share of votes a political party has got. So numerous scholars, numerous political experts are suggesting that India should replace the first past the post system with proportional representation, and even some are suggesting that there should be the mixture of both. So this was first reform which is which has been suggested by numerous scholars. And number second reform is you know, when elections are held, you know, polling stations are, you know, made, polling booths are made. So it is suggested that number of polling booths should be increased. Okay? In a constituency, people should not made to suffer. People it should be made, you know, it government should make it sure that people do not have to travel far distances, and so that is why number of polling booths should be increased such that people may not have to suffer. And third reform, which is suggested by numerous, you know, political experts, is that there should be the check on the roll of money. There should be a check on the roll of money in elections. Okay? As I have already told you that in India, one of the drawbacks of elections is that there is the notion of money power. Okay? But only those candidates are getting tickets who have basically assets, who are coming from the wealthy families. Okay? And you know, there is a lot of expenditure which is being spent on, you know, buying votes, and you know, which is an electoral malpractice. So one of the suggestions is that there should be the check on the roll of money in elections. And as I have told you already that there is lack of transparency, because जो electoral bond system लाया गया है, electoral bonds में you do not know who has donated to the political party, which corporate, which company, or which individual has donated to the political party and how much. So and we do not know how political parties spend this amount. Okay? So there should be the check on the roll of money in elections. It is also suggested that model code of conduct should be followed in letter and spirit. Since this model code of conduct does not have any legal backing, but it has developed over the period of time, it is basically the consensus of political parties, and then Election Commission of India, Election Commission has then, you know, reaffirmed it, and Election Commission has also, you know, started to issuing model code of conduct. But this model code of conduct should be followed in letter and spirit by each political party, each candidate, and the government of the time. Fifth, reservation of women in parliament and state legislature. So as we have already discussed that one of the limits, one of the flaws where we see that we do not have a due representation to the women folk in our parliament and in our state legislature. So how we can overcome this? We have to bring a reservation policy for women. We have to give them reservation in parliament and state legislature, such that gender equality is ensured. Because अभी हम अगर देखेंगे, I have already told you that in our parliament, in our Lok Sabha, there are only 14% of the women. So in order to empower women, in order to persuade women to contest the elections, you need, apart from many other things, apart from taking many other initiatives, one of the initiatives would be there should be the reservation of women in parliament. And I would say before some years, women reservation bill was, you know, tabled in the parliament, but it did not it was debated but it did not got passed. ठीक है, ये lapse हुई है. Women reservation bill was tabled in the parliament, but I have already told you that there are numerous, apart from social reasons, there are also religious reasons wherein wherein some religions do not allow women to enter in the politics, and social norms wherein the society looks down upon the women who contest or who participate or who are interested in political process of the country. So how you can basically undo their underrepresentation is one of the means is you have to give them reservation, and once you give them reservation, many women would be persuaded, and they would contest to the elections, and when there is reservation for women, there are chances that women will there are fair enough chances that women will get those seats. So let us relook what we have done so far today. As I have already told you that our topic is electoral reforms, wherein electoral, if you have to define electoral reforms, I have already written here. Electoral reforms are basically initiatives undertaken in order to strengthen the democracy, in order to make elections more free and fair. ठीक है, and हमने पहले डिस्कस किया है इस the flaws present in our electoral process and electoral system. Then I have named the various committees which were framed to suggest the reforms, and then then we have discussed some of the reforms which are suggested by numerous scholars or numerous committees. So if you have any question or you have any confusion related to this topic, you can write to us on comment section. Thank you so much.